Innovation here at Michigan State. I lead our alumni development and outreach work here for the program. If you are new to Innovate State, welcome. This is our fireside chat speaker series that the Burgess Institute hosts on campus throughout the year, both fall and spring semesters, where we regularly bring back accomplished alumni, Spartans, and friends of the institution who are entrepreneurs, makers, doers, innovators in their own industries. And it's a chance for them to talk about their successes, their failures, their insights, and a chance for them to share stories and wisdom with all of you. So thanks so much for being here tonight. Really appreciate it. This is the last Innovate State of the fall semester, but rest assured, we are hosting another 4 or 5 Innovate States in the spring semester. So we'll be back at it here in the Entrepreneurship Lab in the Minskoff Pavilion starting again in January. I know that finals week is just around the corner, so I appreciate all of you being here today. You got one more week of classes, right, next week, and then finals. So it's kind of a mad dash here to the finish. But I appreciate you taking time out of your schedule to be here, investing in yourself, and learning from an accomplished entrepreneur. Speaking of entrepreneurship, just a few commercials about upcoming programs. We're still doing some stuff, right, before finals hits us. So we've got tomorrow, the Entrepreneurship Association Student Club is hosting their fall pitch competition. It's free to attend, I believe, and it's going to be held tomorrow. Registration, the link to registration is in the link in their bio on Instagram. That's the best spot where you can get to the registration. But again, we encourage you to check that out tomorrow. Then we've also got the Burgess New Venture Challenge. Anyone been to the Burgess New Venture Challenge before? Yeah, I see a few folks around here. Lori, good to know that you've been there. Excellent. The Burgess New Venture Challenge is MSU's premier flagship campus-wide student pitch competition. And so that competition regularly has a purse of over $50,000 in prize money that we distribute to students throughout the competition, or at the end of the competition, rather. And so we, right now, are accepting applications for that. So if you are a student that has an idea, you've worked on a startup idea, maybe you're a part of the Burgess Institute's Venture Creation Program, but you have not submitted an application, you still have time to do so, and we highly encourage you. There's no risk in applying, right? The worst that can happen is you don't become a semifinalist. So we highly encourage you to do that. Again, go to eship.msu.edu. You can learn more about the Burgess Venture Challenge there and find the application link there as well. Lastly, we've also got a really cool pop-up shop happening next Tuesday in the College of Nursing building. We have this really cool new student e-commerce site called Student Made that features MSU students who are entrepreneurs and selling their wares, apparel, textiles, jewelry, all sorts of cool stuff through the Student Made marketplace. But we're also doing some really cool in-person pop-up shops along the way. And the next one is going to be held next Tuesday from 10:30 to 1:30. Yes, I got that time right. In the College of Nursing building. So check it out. There's some really cool stuff being made by your peers here at Michigan State that you might want to pick up for the holiday season. Just saying. I think that's about it for commercials. And again, I appreciate you being here. I know it's time out of your schedule and things are busy, but rest assured you're going to learn a lot tonight. So I'm going to let my colleague Lori Fisher, Director of Operations at the Burgess Institute, do a little bit more of an introduction, but really pleased to have our guest David Powell here on campus earlier today. Both him and his spouse Kelly, appreciate you being here. And I'm really excited for him as a co-founder and CEO, a chance to share more about his story and his company and impart some of his wisdom with you. So if you can join me all thanking David for being tonight's speaker. Appreciate it.
Hello, hello, everybody. Hopefully that works. I am Lori Fisher, Director of Operations at the Burgess Institute for Entrepreneurship and Innovation. And David, welcome.
Hi, everyone.
Yeah.
Good afternoon, good evening. Great to be here.
Yeah.
And thanks, Chris. I always appreciate a good hype man. And we'll try and deliver on it tonight. So,
yeah.
I just want to thank everyone for coming out. I know you're busy. And this time of year is really busy, and you don't have to be here. You guys just coming to these things that happen every month, you're going to learn so much. And because every month basically is someone who has a unique story, and you're going to glean things out of there that are going to make you successful. So the fact that you came here tonight to me is very impressive, and you're already ahead of a lot of your peers. So I hope you learned something, but if not, you'll learn something in some of these things, I'm sure, along the way. So. And you're in the knowledge business right now. Your job is to get as much knowledge as you can. So when we cut you loose, you're super successful, right? And so there's no way better than to talk to experts, right? And so I like to play golf. I don't know if anyone else likes to play golf, but I'm like, oh, I want to get better at golf. And so a couple, 3 years ago, I was like, now I could teach myself, or I can find the absolute best instructor in my area, the best golf instructor in West Michigan to teach me. And that's what I did. And that person then can get me there a lot faster than I can get there by myself, right? So that's what you're doing tonight. You're learning from experts, and I'm excited to just talk about whatever you guys want to talk about. You know, there's so many things to talk about. So where do we start?
Right. I know you have so much knowledge and to share your journey and your stories, your path and everything. But before we get there, tell us a little bit about yourself. Are you okay with the sea of Spartans here that are surrounding you?
Why would you ask me that question? Have you been on my LinkedIn?
Tell us about your education, where you went to school, what you majored in, and all that.
And I don't know if this chair can contain me. The camera might not. Like, I always talk and walk and talk, but we'll see. The cameraman, you might have to keep up. But thanks. Yeah, you know, like you guys, I was sitting in a classroom like this a couple of days ago, and it's been a heck of a journey, and I've learned a tremendous amount. And education has allowed me to do what I do today. And you know, I started out, I got a engineering degree, undergrad, and at Kettering University, and that's where I met the interim dean, Whipple. Her and I were classmates, and she invited me down here to speak with you guys today. And so I learned a lot, and then through that process, I went out to work in the real world, worked for a couple years, but when I was going undergrad, I actually had my eye on grad school because I really wanted education. So I'm in an engineering grad school, but I'm not equipped to do what you guys want to do or what I wanted to do. So yeah, I went to grad school in a place down the road, and I got a master's degree. I got an MBA and a master's degree in engineering. And with that, I went out into the corporate world. Yes?
Fast question, but did you by chance go to Michigan?
I did. I went to University of Michigan. And
School.
but we're huge Spartan fans. My daughter Sydney graduated here in December of 2021, and had a phenomenal experience. And my daughter Ashley was just accepted. She's a senior in high school. Had just a phenomenal experience. So I can't say enough about RBC and all the programs here at Michigan State. My sister went here. Most of my relatives went here, and so I think it's just a phenomenal place. And if we're here again in the future, it's wonderful. That's for sure. So longtime Spartan fan, and then just back to more education, and then out in the real world. And for me, I went to grad school, and then I graduated, and then I wanted to get a job. I had several opportunities to go into different jobs, fortunately, but I ended up moving to Grand Rapids because I was dating a girl in Grand Rapids, so that's a logical reason to go there, who's now my wife. And I cold called a company called
Who's
Steel.
right back there, by
Who's
the way?
back there? So Kelly Powell, everybody, is one of the smartest people I know, and is the CFO at Enwork. And so we run this company together, and we sit 6 feet apart at work, which is sort of weird. I actually don't recommend that for most couples, but for somehow we make it work. So it's been a lot of fun. But I got started in office furniture out of college. Did a lot of marketing. So earlier in my career, I worked for General Motors for 2 years before grad school. I worked for Steelcase for 9 years in marketing mostly. And Kelly and I had talked for several years about starting our own business because I had the entrepreneurial itch, and had it for quite a while. And we actually were going to do something different than what I was doing. But then at a certain point, I knew too much about the industry I'm in, which was office furniture. And so I said, we're going to have to start a business in office furniture, and so we did that 20 years ago. And we have our own niche in that world, and it's been just a phenomenal growth, and the company's grown every year. We're approaching $100 million in revenue, and the company's grown every year in existence, and I've learned so much.
Wow. So you say office furniture, but it's much more than that. It's about spaces and your environment, and you pay attention to mental health, and that's really important to set yourself up in an area that makes you feel more comfortable, right? So it's more than office furniture.
It is, yeah. So for sure, when you get to the high end of office furniture, it's called contract office furniture. So we're a B2B kind of business. And office furniture is a lot like cars in that We make furniture, we sell through a dealer network across the United States, just like buying a new pickup truck or a new car. And then the local experts then interface with the end users. But we're selling to large corporate clients. And so, our biggest corporate client is Tesla. And, that's a client that cares a lot about their space because their space says a lot. The space is what drives their learning, their execution, their speed, attract and retain, and other different things. So very important that we have a really good space. It's just like this building. When this thing appeared in 2019, but we moved in 2021, it really changed the game for Michigan State students. And so that's what happens all over the country. So large companies contact us. Mercedes-Benz last week contacted us. They needed some help in their facility in Atlanta. All kinds of giant customers that now call us when they need help.
Wow, amazing.
Yeah.
Let's back up a little bit.
Sure.
Talk about your career path. Because did you want to get into office furniture business? You worked in the automotive industry. Tell us what you did. What was your first job out of college? How did it lead you to become an entrepreneur?
Right. So, I didn't have a lot of worldly experience, honestly, going into undergrad. And so I didn't know much. And so I'm getting an engineering degree and I'm learning. And I'm already got my eye on graduate school because I wanted to learn some more. But you get a job and it's a really important, even if you're going to be an entrepreneur down the road, you learn so much working for someone else. You learn what's right, and more importantly, you learn what does not work. And so I learned so many lessons in what doesn't work. So I worked for General Motors for 2 years. I was a manufacturing engineer. I was in Lansing. I was in new product development in Detroit. Met some great people. I had some phenomenal experiences, and I learned. And like a lot of people, where you start your career is not where you end your career. And eventually, like I said, I switched into the world of office furniture. Now, nobody's born in that world, and you're like, well, it's sort of a basic world. But once you get into it and you learn about it, it's a very sophisticated world. Our customers are the architects and interior designers of America. They're trying to build statement buildings, or a lot of universities trying to do the same, and it's a very competitive business. And so it's very interesting, but it has a lot of art to it and design as well, which is part of what I like about it. But you just keep learning. When I worked at Steelcase, I did mostly marketing. I started out as a marketing specialist. I became a associate product manager, and you do a few different things, and you just start learning all the different ways. Then at a certain point, I end up in charge of furniture marketing with a big team of people, and you learn a lot more about life there as well. But I don't know. I've always wanted to start my own business, and I had all kinds of ideas, but then you end up having kids, and things happen to you, and time goes by, and then honestly, I'm so busy running furniture marketing for another company, it's hard to do both to start a business, right? And we're trying to do that, and it's very difficult. And so, fortunately, at a certain point, we made the break, and 20 years ago, so our business is 20 years old. You make a break, and then you learn all kinds of things. Like I said, when you're at big companies, you start learning there's not necessarily always clear decision-making processes and other things that you're like, wow, we could do this a lot better. So.
Yeah.
So we did that.
And I think that's it's amazing that our students here, so many of them in this room, have started their own businesses already with the help of their peers and with the Burgess Institute and with being involved in the minor. So we always say, take that risk right now while you have a support system before you get tied up in real world stuff that complicates things a little bit more. So that's why for all of you, do it now.
For sure.
type of thing.
Right. Once you have a house payment and 4 kids, then all of a sudden your options are more limited.
Yeah.
So it's a great time, and you get the support of the university.
So let's talk about some of the risks that you've taken. What hasn't worked for you? What kind of failure stories do you have? Because we really support failure. So that's how you learn, right? So what have you learned, and what experiences have you had?
Well, there's all kinds of things that define failure. Of course, you don't get the promotion you want. That's happened to me, right? Or your company's downsizing and people lose jobs. That happens all the time, and they could be really great people. that happens to people. You launch a new product that the only one who likes it is your mom, or your wife, right? And it's like nobody likes it, right? And so that happens. Fortunately, that happens to us, not too often, but it's happened, right? And you've invested all this time and money. When I worked for Steelcase, I was on a new product development project for 8 months. And we put our heart and soul on it. I was in development. We're doing a lot of market testing. We're doing market research. I'm traveling the country, getting input. And then after 8 months, the whole project gets canceled because we actually decide that the product's not viable, right? So I just put 8 months of my heart and soul into this product, which to try and make it go, and then I had to recommend that we shut the project down. And that's not failure necessarily, but it doesn't make you feel great, right? And that's part of life. And so, just expect that and you just move on, Failures, I've hired the wrong people. I've done all kinds of things. I've had luck. I've tried to buy buildings. I couldn't buy them, and that turned out to be the best thing ever because the company outgrew that building. And so you just make a lot of things happen along the way that you don't foresee, and sometimes you're going to not make great decisions,
that reminds me that I believe that everything happens for a reason, right? With the good and the bad, it leads you to where you're supposed to be and the experiences that you are supposed to have. Being an entrepreneur, were you an entrepreneur in college? You said you wanted to be an entrepreneur in your own business. How did you know that?
I don't know. I was not an entrepreneur in college, not necessarily, no. And part of it, is again, I'm just learning and learning what the world has to offer. So if you know that already, like I said, you just have a leg up and good for you. I would say grad school, all of a sudden, I'm exposed to a lot of stuff, just like you guys are. And I'm like, this is really interesting, right? All the things you learn that you didn't know much about, whether it's finance, investment banking, consulting, entrepreneurship, and you just get exposed to stuff. That's why you go to college and not everyone goes to college and knows what their major is going to be, right? And there's probably half you people in this room that said, I have no idea what I was going to be when I came to Michigan State. And so you get there and you realize, all right, I'm probably interested in too many things business, right? I love finance and I love consulting and wow, and I love marketing. I ended up doing marketing for my career, and so there's just too many things that interested me. But at that point, when I was at grad school, I really got that itch, and we started. And of course, there were clubs for that, and I got to start practicing there.
Good. So what is it about being an entrepreneur that you love?
What do I love? There are several things that are really great. Some of them are basic, some of them but they're phenomenal, right? So the first thing is, I work with people I really like. And so we build a team that's extremely high-powered team of people I really like and are really impressed with. So when Kelly and I started, and there's one employee, now we have 175 employees. There's a lot of extremely smart, wonderful people there that make this thing happen. And it's just fun working with people like I really enjoy it. For me personally, as I already sort of articulated, I'm really interested in a lot of things. So when I started Enwork, I had to do selling. I've never done selling in my life. And my job in 2004 was to try and find 50 dealers to sell my product. And the company was me and one other person. It was a 2-person company. And I wanted to find 50 people, 50 dealers to start selling our product. And I'd call them up and they would be like, who are you? And I'd tell them who I am. And I'm trying to get their time and attention. And I'd make up, I'm like, hey, I'm going to be in Cincinnati next week. Could I come see you on Tuesday at 5 o'clock or 4 o'clock? I wasn't going to be in Cincinnati, but I made them sound like it. And they're like, oh, yeah, I'm open at 4. And so I got to do selling, right? And so my job was to find 50 dealers, and we found 54. And then by the year 2, we wanted to have 100, and we had 110. And so I'm learning selling. I'm learning finance. I'm now pretty much an expert in financial statements. All of that goes into that. I know about banking. It's just been fun working in a lot of different areas. I do design. I've designed my own furniture. And honestly, I designed the most popular furniture product in the whole market in 2018, which is a conference table called Equilibrium, which was a very unique product. And architect and design community in the United States loved it because it was so unique, and it became the hottest selling conference table in America. And Elon Musk wanted one for his conference room. We put one in SpaceX. All kinds of things that were super fun to us happened. So the things I love is the diversity of it. You know, I love being able to contribute to our community and the impact we make to our community. You know, I have a lot of flexibility for time. You know, obviously there's a lot of potential to, you know, to make a lot of money if you're a successful entrepreneur, which you won't find working for a large company. So there's all kinds of things that you like, but mostly I just really enjoy the people and just doing so many different things and having such a unique life.
So you enjoy wearing all the hats to a certain extent, and I would suppose that when you first started, you wore all the hats. So how did you know, like, how did you start? Did you start from nothing? How did you prepare to make that leap?
Yeah. So, yeah, that's pretty much how it started. We started with nothing. We bootstrapped our company. So Kelly and I own the whole company. You know, in order to do that, you know, we were in our 30s, and so, you know, I had some money, right? And I had, you know, I did a second mortgage on my house. We had some money, not a lot of money. And so we started bootstrapping the company, and we started out with one employee, and you start going from there. And then after a year, we hired 2 more people. And, you know, after 3 years, we had a 4-person company. And so, you know, and you're losing money at the beginning, right? You're not instantly making money, and then we're losing money, and then we're starting to make money. So, you know, people, in some ways we were crazy, right? You know, I was convinced it was going to work, you know, but, you know, that's just me. I'm an optimist. There was never any doubt. But there's, in fact, a lot of doubt, right? And you don't really know. So, and so you just work hard and you make it happen. And then you start building. So I did everything at the beginning. Now, you know, we have a sales team. I only travel if I want. I have a marketing team. I have a finance team. I have 12 engineers. You know, I have everything. So, you know, as a CEO, it's a whole different world than being an entrepreneur. And I love both worlds. I love doing everything. But I love the company now because honestly, we have so many really smart people that it's really fun as well. So we're trying to, you know, reinvent. It's always a challenge. Like, how do you grow a company so that it never gets smaller? You know, that doesn't happen that you grow too often, that you grow 20 years and don't have a drop in revenue. How do we grow through COVID? Huge challenge. How do we grow through a cybersecurity incident, which we had last June when Russian hackers took us down for a week? You know, how do we grow through 2021 when steel went up 110% and containers went from $4,500 to $23,000, and so just continual challenges. But you know, my job now is to just support all my teams and set the vision of the company. So that's what I do now.
Yeah. So setting the vision, the strategy, that's what a leader does, right? That's what you would consider yourself. So you've moved away from the wearing all the hats,
Right.
Unless you want to. But what are some other things that you've learned being a CEO, a leader, a founder of a company? What's some good advice for our students here?
There's all kinds of advice, right? And so, you know, you can start a business in anything and be successful. So a lot of times, you're trying to find the right product or service or app that's unique, right? And if you can find that, you know, more power to you. If you're having trouble finding that, you could still be a very successful entrepreneur in coffee shops, flower shops, all kinds of things, right? And you can end up being incredibly successful in things that aren't that innovative, but you just execute better than everyone else. Mm-hmm. So, you know, you can go down a variety of paths. So, you know, that's one thing I've learned is there's so many paths out there for you. You know, now that I'm into it, you know, the thing you're selling and the thing you're doing is very important, but basically more important than that is you're in the people business. So you got to get your head around, I'm not in the furniture business, I'm in the people business, or I'm not in the app business, I'm in the people business, because you can't do everything, of course. You guys know all this, but I just want to reinforce that. You can't do everything. So you need a great team. You know, at the end of the day, I want my team to say, Enwork, which is the name of our company, is the best place I've ever worked. Or Enwork, I've never made more money than I've made at Enwork. And that's what drives me. And And so I'm in the people business. And so how do I make people happy? You better have really good understanding of people. You got to have good emotional intelligence, right? You got to understand, what are people thinking? What are you thinking? What's driving you right now? In order to make this team the best team it can possibly be. So you end up in the people business, and through that, you're going to motivate employees. I treat you got to think of them almost as customers. They work for me, but I think of them as customers because I need them to be successful in order for me to be successful. Our supply chain, same way. I give them business, but in fact, I think of them as customers, right? So it's a mindset. I'm in the people business. They're my customers. I need them to be successful. I can't do everything. So I think, that's a big part of it. And there's many elements to that. I think something you may not think about, one of the most important things you're going to have to think about is your pricing strategy. And I don't know how much time you've thought about that, but nothing drives success more than the correct pricing strategy. So the pricing strategist in your company is maybe the second most important person after the CEO. So this is an ability to really understand your costs. So you have to understand your costs really well, and then you got to understand what the market will pay. And there's all kinds of ways to understand price elasticity, but it's never really clear cut. What is the right price for the product? You can do competitive benchmarks. My belief with competitive benchmarks is more than not, people end up trying to slightly beat the competitor and end up underpricing their product. So there's a lot of underpriced products in the market, and it drives your profitability. I mean, does anyone know what the average profitability is for a company in the United States? The last time I checked, it was 6%. In my industry of publicly traded companies, it's about 2.5%. So you're going to ask yourself, what kind of company do I want to run? Do I want to make 2%, 6% net income? Do I want to make 10%, 15%? Does it, Apple and 20, 30% net income? Incredible. In office furniture, it's a little trickier to do that than technology. So, things I've learned as a CEO is what is the right pricing strategy? So you take your best shot, you talk to customers, and then you listen like crazy. Because if customers start saying, man, I love this product, this is a great price, I only paid X for it. When I hear about someone who loves the product so well, and they got such a good deal, my brain thinks it's time for a 7% price increase because we've underpriced the product. So there's a lot of science to pricing, so I'll just throw that out there because I don't know how much time you guys spend on that. But it really drives the profitability of the company, which is going to drive investment in everything you do. So extremely, extremely important. I also will say, there's how do you work through a recession? In my opinion, you grow your company through a recession by expediting and increasing your product development. So the bigger the recession, the more products you better be coming out with, because you have to mitigate your lost core business with new products. So we've been successful fighting through recession, doing that as well. So those are just things to think of.
Yeah, good things to think of, that's for sure. So this session is called Thinking Ahead of the Curve. So let's move on to innovation and your thoughts on that. What is innovation to you?
Innovation comes in all sizes and shapes. And like I said, you can have the most innovative product in the world. And that's great if you do. But you can do things slightly better and be extremely successful. And so, there's various ways to get there. Now you've got to have the creativity to come up with the ideas, and you guys are working on that. And they're teaching you about, and you're game playing, and you're trying different things, and you're doing cases, and trying to build the right innovation. But to us, we're trying to we want to think of things differently. And so we're trying to think of things that haven't been done before within the business we've selected to be in. And whether it's flowers or coffee shops or conference tables, the thing that was innovative about the equilibrium table was that it bolted to the ground. So with it bolted to the ground, you could have enormously long cantilevering elements, which created incredible amount of knee space in the conference table. And that was worth a lot of money to a lot of people. They liked that. And to architects and interior designers across the country, you get Gensler, which is the #1 architect and design firm in the world, excited about your product, and then all of a sudden you end up in a lot of places. So, and that's how simple is that? We bolted down a conference table. I mean, that's not that innovative. I thought of it at a volleyball match, watching my girls play volleyball. And, but turns out it had never been done before. And everyone like, wow, that's crazy. And it led to a huge sales. And we've got one right now we're doing the same way. It's called Expanse. It's a 36-foot boardroom table that's on 2 legs. It's highly engineered. And there's never been boardroom tables of this size engineered in this way. And we just thought about, all right, the world offers 20-foot conference tables. We get asked for larger, and let's think about how can we do it slightly different. You know, we're not trying to put someone on Mars. You know, we'll leave that to SpaceX. But in those big things, but it's resulted in phenomenal business growth and profitability. So one of the things we try and do every year, in addition to growing the revenue of our business, is growing the profitability of the business as well. And if you can grow both in the same year, then you're really good at what you do. And so that's what we try and do every year. We've grown our company every single year. We probably grow profitability as a percentage of sales probably 7 out of 10 years. And that's really hard to do. Yeah. A lot of it is developing products that are more profitable than the products they replaced, and a lot of that is through innovation. So you got to think of things that are different and unique. And then you got to have the right pricing strategy, right? We just sold Mercedes-Benz a $73,000 conference table. And you're like, oh my God, who would pay that much money for one conference table? I never thought, right? When we started out, we would sell a $5,000 conference table, and then we went up from there, and we keep making it more and more expensive conference tables and increasing profitability, and people buy them. And then we made a conference table base out of fiberglass because that's never been done before in our world. So, you know, I'm looking at boats, and there's some really interesting industrial design in some boats and fiberglass, and so I'm like, let's make a conference table out of fiberglass, and it's very beautiful. It's an organic art form, really, and then you can charge a lot of money for it. So yeah.
So high profitability does not always mean high revenue, right? Or high revenue does not always mean high profitability.
For sure, right?
And then are you saying that being innovative and differentiating yourself may be more important to think about, and then you can set your prices at a higher price point?
Yeah, and exactly. So, you know, there's all levels of price points in the marketplace. We're interested in the things that are profitable. You know, somebody says to me, hey, everyone's working from home. Are you guys going to set up a B2C website and ship products into homes? And I'm like, I don't like that business. That business is not profitable. And that business has a lot of other issues with returns and things. You know, we're let's focus on what we're doing and trying to just innovate around what we're doing. You know, we do a lot of classroom furniture at universities. We're trying to make innovative classroom furniture. There's a lot of our furniture actually in the Epley building over there. Yeah. And we work with a lot of universities, so we're just trying to innovate in that regard.
Yeah, so over in Epley, the Multicultural Center has your furniture, and then there's some classrooms on the second floor over there, right?
That's true.
Has furniture, so that you donated. So if anybody wants to check that out, you can check it out over at Epley. So you talked about a couple ways that Enwork is staying ahead of the curve with your designs, your innovative designs, your materials, artwork, things like that. What are other ways that you are staying ahead of the curve and encouraging innovation?
Yeah, well, you know, a lot of it is you can be good at a lot of things outside of your core product. So you're selling your core product, but there's a lot more to running a really good company than your core product, right? And so it's your marketing, it's your customer service, it's your sales team. And so, you know, how can I make all of this work better? How can we acknowledge orders faster? How can I make, you know, designing with Enwork furniture easier? You know, that's not even our core product, but if I can innovate in that area, so, you know, hey, let's come up with a configurator on our website that people can configure their own sort of CAD-like that renders on our website, right? Hey, let's put that out there, make it easier to do business with. That's not a core product, But we innovated, and everywhere I travel, people are like, I love your product configurator. It's so easy to work with. Or, I like working with your design team, Dave, because they get back to us so fast. Speed, there's so much to our success around the area of speed. Quick decision making, and speed in everything we do. Speed in product development, the more products we have, the more we'll sell. Speed in getting back to our customers. This is simple stuff, but honestly, if you're really good at speed and marketing and getting back to your customers, you can do very well. I mean, there are plenty of tables companies out there before we existed, and these are $30 or $40 million companies that existed. Then we show up, and we get a lot bigger than them. Now we're like the big one in our niche, anyways. And they were all just sitting there watching us go by, right? And you're like, I wonder what they're thinking. And they're like, they didn't exist. Now they're a big deal. Why is that? What did they do? And a lot of it's around speed, and a lot of it's around execution, and a lot of it's around quick decision making. So, it's just, how you treat people, how do you do your marketing better than others? And it's got to be simple innovation. I don't know if I've answered your question, but you don't always have to come up with the next big thing. Now, there are a lot of companies, NVIDIA, right? There's Lyft and Uber. There's all these companies that came up with the next big thing that are giant successful too. And if you can come up with that, more power to you.
Yeah. One thing is, can innovation be part of your culture? Like you touched on treating your employees the way that you feel that they should be treated, and in emotional intelligence.
Right.
So that is something too that, that those are words, emotional intelligence and all that is in diversity, inclusivity, that is so important to the culture of a company.
Yeah, I haven't really talked about culture. Behind all of the execution and the ideas is the culture of the company, right? And it's extremely important. So a lot of my job, honestly now too, is around culture. And culture is more than a 30-second answer in having a great culture. But like I said, the aspiration at the beginning is that people just love working there. And people don't want to leave. And we have this great team, and it's very fulfilling. And people feel like they have a purpose. So that's our goal. And you have to put that in all levels of your organization. So the person in Vanita, who's our receptionist, is a rock star. She's the best receptionist she's ever had, and she talks to more customers every day than I do. She talks to most customers, right? And so having Vanita execute at a high level is wonderful. So I talk to Vanita, and so I spend a lot of time, honestly, talking to all 175 employees. I don't have time to ask all of them how their weekend was, but I'm trying to communicate with them and trying to, honestly, you do all kinds of things. You celebrate success. You have a good plan. At the end of the day, they want a leader that they trust. They're like, wow, Dave Powell, he knows what he's doing. He has a plan. He's working the plan. All right, I like that. I understand my role on the plan, and I understand my role is extremely important. And silly little thing that this person's working on, we automated the emailing of purchase orders last week, as simple as that is in our business system, and it just saved hours of time. It was a huge success. And somebody did that, and so that person is a rock star, and that's in our IT department. And so you have rock stars all over your company. And so, for me, I have to communicate. I meet with the whole company every Wednesday at 9. And then every month we share, insight into company financials and dashboards, and just share information, you guys. Talk to people and let them know that you care what they're doing. Give shout outs whenever you can. I try and be, almost everything I say is positive. I have never been a big believer, and maybe some of you played athletics and, the coach that yelled at you constantly all the time. But I think long term, for a really high profile or a highly productive team that will run through a wall to get something done, I really think they have to respect and like me. And for me personally, in fulfillment, I just want to like my people. And that, it worked. When COVID hit, we were in a bind, right? Our business, or the office furniture segment, went down 30 to 40%, but Enwork grew. And, why? We pivoted. So we pivoted into a different product, which was actually a derivative of a product we sold, which was screenings. We quickly realized that, people who had to work needed to be protected, right? So you needed acrylic dividers and all kinds of screening materials to keep people safe during the pandemic. So we pivoted into a company, and it just, and I had my team work. I told my engineers, I said, this is what we're going to do. They started working 24/7, and they gave me everything. They worked 24/7 because we had to get done fast. We had to be the screen solution for all the dealers in America, and we had to have that out there fast because the first one there is going to get the bulk of the business. And so we were working around the clock. I had it's sort of like college. I had a Sunday night supply chain call at Sunday at 9. I had a Zoom call. You know, that's not normal for me, and you just did whatever you take. But I had a team that really jumped through hoops and cared about the company. So, and a lot of that's culture, and a lot of that's how do you treat people, and being, you know, I'm trying to be very humble, you know, and being just a humble, normal guy. I sit out. I don't have a private office. I sit in the middle of the troops, and we just have a lot of fun, and that's what I enjoy. And then, you know, people will say, I've never worked at a company where the owner is so actively involved, and they tend to like that for some reason. And so we treat them well. We talk to everybody, and then people just do a great job.
Yeah, I think it makes a difference when employees see their leaders walk the talk and work just as hard as they are. It motivates and drives other people around you, right?
I think so.
Yeah.
And you know, and then I'll do anything, you know, whatever it takes, right? And I don't have to shovel the sidewalk much anymore, but I used to do that, or I had to jump on a high-low and load a truck. Stuff I am not trained for, as my wife will tell you. Like, get him off a high-low. But, you know, and so being an entrepreneur, you know, being an entrepreneur and then being a CEO is just so much more than the thing. And so you got to be good at all the things. So, you know, my advice is, holy cow, you know, figure out a way to understand at least basic financial statements thoroughly. Do I understand what an income statement is, a balance sheet, you know? Do I have a skill set to understand pricing? Do I understand my costs? You know, how do I treat people? How do people want to be treated? All these are extremely important. You don't necessarily have to know marketing. You can hire marketing people, you can hire engineers, but there's some basic things that's just helpful that you know.
And just a plug for Burgess Institute Discovery Program, we can provide you with those services as well, too, so you don't have to know all those things, absolutely. You want to surround yourself with people who know a little bit more than you, right?
For sure. And, you know, and you don't have to know everything, but you got to know, if you're going to be great at being an entrepreneur, you got to know a little bit about some key things. Because as you know, a lot of businesses don't make it, right? So there's certain things you can't do. You don't want to make those mistakes.
So that kind of ties into, we were talking earlier about you equated entrepreneurship to a board game.
Yeah.
Can you explain that more?
Well, I don't know. To be a good entrepreneur, you got to be highly competitive, I think, because it's very challenging, right? And so I'm very competitive, and it starts as a kid. I loved playing board games, and I loved winning, right? And as silly as that is, being a business owner is sort of like playing a board game, because there are companies all over America that compete with us every day, and their entire job is to take every order we sell and put us at zero revenue. I mean, they're in Wisconsin, they're in Indiana, they're in Michigan, they're in Southern California, and they're in Toronto, among other places. I know who they are, I know where they sit, and they're out to take our business, which is a lot like a board game when you're playing. It's a lot like Monopoly, right, or Life or something, right? So, you know, it's Monopoly, but with real money. So, you know, it's just very interesting to me. I love it. I absolutely love it. It's a huge challenge, and even for me, I'm not a serial entrepreneur, but the challenge always changes, and there's always things that happen.
Right. You can't be afraid of risk or change.
Right.
Do you have what other advice do you have for fledgling entrepreneurs, for the students here?
You know, we talked about a lot of key things. I've talked about things you should get knowledge of. You know, don't be afraid to fail. Don't be afraid to get downsized. You know, a lot of you are probably wondering about your next internship. You're wondering about your first job, and life is quite a journey. And you get to my point and you realize, all right, that decision wasn't as important as I thought it was at that time. So, you know, I just tell people to relax a little bit, because you will find your way. If you've came to this class tonight when you don't have to be here, maybe it's because you needed to eat. But if you came here and you don't have to be here, you're already on your way, and you're probably going to make it. So, I give you a lot of credit for that, because you don't have to be here. You're just here to learn. You're going to the golf coach so you can learn faster, right? Just my analogy earlier. And so, I've learned things along the way. Don't be afraid to fire people. I'm nice. I don't like firing people, but that's an important part of the job. You have to. Sometimes you get people that aren't a good fit for the job, and you don't know that when you hire them. And they're great people, but they may not be the right fit. So they have to go because the team has to be great. Sometimes you fire people because they steal from you. That's easy. Sometimes you fire people because they don't follow your core values. That's a harder one. And earlier last February, I had some experience in that. And so, at the end of the day, it's about how do you treat people? How do you treat your coworkers? Are we all on the same team? So, I'm giving you advice now about building your team and having the right teammates, right? And sometimes you have to manage that, and you get rid of someone and you find a rock star. So
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up core values, because with your company, everybody here should be creating like a mission statement, vision statement, and core values. But your core values will never change. They most likely will not change, no matter how much you grow, how big of a company you become. Your mission vision might change a little bit, but your core values are so important to the stability and the base of what your company stands for, and that's how people are going to follow you.
That's right.
Right, and have trust in you.
For sure.
So I think we're coming towards the end. We'll open up to questions a little bit, but last question. We talked about, there's no one path, right? And thinking beyond of what you see right now, that what you're afraid of tomorrow or what you're going to face. Can you speak a little bit more to that?
Sure. So, my advice to you guys, so if you're trying to get to a certain place and you're going to be an intern, maybe you're going for an internship next summer, I always urge people to think about how can I get an internship in a really great area at a really great company, right? That's basic, right? And sometimes you do whatever you have to do that. And getting those experiences. And sometimes that means walking away from money, right? Maybe I can make X doing this as an intern and I make this Y. You really want to do what's going to give you the best learning, the best culture, the best company. And so don't always try and make $2 an hour or more. And if you're graduating, don't take a job because you make $2,000 more. Don't do it. Where's the right company with the right culture and the right fit? And things will happen. If you start, do this exercise, if you make $60,000 leaving Michigan State and you get a 4% raise, when you're my age, you're going to make $237,000. And, you're going to have, career earnings of $4.6 million, right? And so you got to think about that in light of where you're at right now. And so what experiences can I do to make myself get where I want to be when I graduate? And if you have to take an internship that pays you no money, I would do that. And that's not easy.
No.
Right? Because you got to pay the bills. But then you got to think about the long game. Now, you still have to make that happen somehow. But I'm just encouraging you to try and get yourself in the right spot. Because at the end of the day, if you get through Michigan State and you've got some great experiences, I've interviewed hundreds of people and hundreds of people. And, if you end up coming out of college and you got great experiences, it's just a huge advantage, right? My daughter graduated here. She had experience because she worked for us. And because of that, she had all kinds of, I think, job offers because she had great experiences. Mm-hmm. And she works for a company called Barton Mallow in Detroit. They build skyscrapers and sports stadiums. And it's just great experiences, and I can't remember if that one job paid her the most or not, but it was the right company. So culture is so important. And I've worked for companies in decline. I've worked for companies that are downsizing, and that's not overly fun. Culture is not that fun. So you really want to say, where do I want to work, and and how's that company doing? I think that's really important for me, for sure.
Absolutely. Any other closing thoughts?
I can talk all day, so so I'll just open it up to questions.
Yeah, thank you so much. This has been so informative. Any other questions? We'll open it up to questions right down here.
What was your best and worst financial decision?
It's a good question. Best financial decision. We made a lot of investments. Probably the best investment I made, and this won't mean a lot to you, but there's a giant trade show in our business called Neocon. It's in Chicago once a year. And so I rented, I have a permanent showroom in Chicago. We now have showrooms all over the United States, but very expensive. Very expensive. And I'm like, oh my God. But it paid off in spades. So why? Because all of a sudden, every architect and designer and furniture dealer in America goes to this trade show, if not every year, every 2 or 3 years. So I got built our brand, basically. So I think that was probably the best decision, but it's hard, because it's so much money, a lot of intuition involved in being an entrepreneur, you guys. There's a lot of gray. It's not always black and white, for sure. I don't know, Kelly, what's our worst financial investment? I'm trying to think what that would be, but I don't know, can you think of anything? I don't know. I don't know, we've bought buildings, we got all kinds of buildings and manufacturing sites. I bought a company once. We did product development that didn't happen, and then you're disappointed for sure. So thanks for the question.
Yeah, that's great. I think we had one back here first, and I'll come back to you.
Oh, good.
So first I was wondering if any corporations or companies approached you to buy your company. And then second to that, I was kind of wondering if you have some sort of exit strategy with your current company, or if you plan to pass it on to your kids, what your exit strategy is.
Yeah, thanks for that. So yeah, when you're an entrepreneur and a CEO, it's a wild ride. So, like I mentioned, I bought a company. It wasn't a huge company, but that was a fun process. But yeah, there was a strategic buyer that showed up in 2017, invited Kelly and I to meet them at the JW Marriott in Grand Rapids, and offered us an incredible amount of money for the company. And we're walking to the parking lot, and we're like, well, what idiot says no to that? We're going to have to do that. Well, turns out we said no. Because that's a whole nother story. But basically, I said the company's not for sale, because we weren't for sale. So I said, if you want to buy it, here's a new price. And then there's things that happened thereafter. And then, at a certain while, they were like, wow, I don't want to pay that much money. That's a lot. That's a huge multiple, to use the term, right? I'm like, I know, because it's not for sale. And it turns out it was the best thing that ever happened to us, honestly. I've thoroughly enjoyed the last 5 years. I've had so much fun. And the company's done so well, far beyond what we lost out on that. So it worked out. Exit strategy, I don't know. I'm going 100 miles an hour, and people I went to college with are starting to retire. But we love what we do. I love what I do. It's completely fascinating. I go to Washington, D.C. a couple weeks ago. I talk to customers. I go here, I go there. It's just fascinating working with teams. So it's a lot of fun. So I think our exit strategy will be to just pass it on. Because we have 4 kids, if they are interested in it, I will probably pass it on. If they're not, that's fine. I don't care. I tell them I don't care either way. Well, we can do something else. So time will tell how that works out. But just because I do this doesn't mean my kids can, right? Just because I'm good at entrepreneur or being a CEO doesn't mean they can, right? So that's part of it too. You don't want to just hand it over and then have it implode, right? Not that it would, but there's all these things. There's a whole thing to study on family businesses, honestly, which I'm just starting to get my head around. I'm sorry. We got great questions. I'm talking too much.
Question
Yes.
over here.
Hi, okay. So I'm currently a senior here in Broad. I'm in the supply chain program, and I know you mentioned that you have had a lot of interviews, and I was curious, kind of 2 questions. What you look for when you're hiring someone, and then what you would recommend for us looking for in a full-time job.
Okay. Great question, because I normally cover this when I talk like this in front of students, but I didn't. So the number one, and I've interviewed hundreds of people, and I don't even know how many people, 700 people. So at the end of the day, do the basics, dress correctly, bring a pen and a paper, right? I hope they told you all this. Based on what happened to my daughter here, the school did a phenomenal job at this, and better than other schools. Come in with 7 questions for me when I interview you. And then at the end, because at the end of the day, if we've already covered all 7, and you said, hey, I had 7 questions, but we already covered them all, I'm like, wow, you did your homework. Or come with 5 questions. But the most important thing is come with enthusiasm. If you walk into an interview with me and say, I've been on your website, you guys have a really great story. I love started in your basement and grew, or man, I love your culture, your company, or I love that Tesla buys more furniture from you than any company on the planet, whatever you come up with. But you're so enthusiastic, and I walked in here and everyone had a smile on their face, and it's a beautiful environment. Whatever you say, just come in with a lot of enthusiasm, because you'd be surprised you don't see that very often. Also make yourself sound smart if you can. I think that always helps. I always tried to pick 1 or 2 words that I was comfortable using that are naturally make people sound smart. I think that's always nice. So, articulate, whatever your word is. That's just an example of a word. But it's mostly about enthusiasm. And then lastly, if you can make it sound like you're a team player or a change agent, you're going to be in really good shape. So enthusiasm, and then anything you've done that promotes you as a team player or a change agent, I'll be so excited and we'll offer you a job. So I hope that answered your question. Good. Yeah.
As of right now, do you currently have any internship or job opportunities for students, or will you have them available in the future?
Yeah, we normally do, it varies, 7 to 15 internships a year. I'm not sure. We've gotten them here, but normally in interior design from Michigan State, for sure. It depends what your degree is and what you want to learn. Anyone, I'll say this, so my name is David Powell, and it's on your website, it's on your sheet, right? So you email me at dpowell@enwork.com, enwork.com, and you can ask me anything. So I have cards too, if you'd like a card. But if you're interested, because we have a phenomenal culture and a fun, growing company, and if you're looking for an internship, we'll see if there's a fit. And I'm happy to do that. If any of you want to just talk more, if you want 15 minutes, if you want 30 minutes of my time, I'll give it to you. So you just have to email me. And we can talk about your projects and your business and your life or your decisions. We can have a Zoom call. We can meet for coffee. You can do whatever you want. I enjoy doing this, so I really enjoy it. So, yeah.
Where did the name Enwork come from?
That's a great question. It's a made-up name, made up in my chair in my living room at 10 o'clock at night. We were struggling with what to name the company. And there's some words behind it that won't mean anything to you. We started with National Work Surface and expanded, and then we cobbled a bunch of things together and came up with Enwork. And a lot of that is can it pass trademark, right? You got to have a trademark attorney. There's so many things we could talk about. I have a patent attorney, I have a business attorney, I have a cybersecurity attorney now. I have all kinds of things, right? And things you have to navigate, in my job. We don't even talk about that. We haven't talked about taxes, and I file taxes in 35 states, or actually 50 states, but there's a lot of things. So we just made it up, but it got through. And then you got to buy the website, right? That's the thing too. Like, we're starting a business in my basement. I don't know, I don't have much money. I'm taking a second mortgage on my house, and I found that name I could buy for $3,000, right? And so I was like, so that's not too bad. Nowadays, you probably can't buy a name for $3,000. I don't know. So that was a good question. Thanks. Go ahead.
How old is your actual company?
20. Yeah, we were 20 in August. August 20th of this year, we were 20 years old, yeah. Next year, we're going to be 21. I told everyone we threw a big party when we were 18 because we were an adult. And I said, we're not going to throw a party when we're 20, we're going to throw a party when we're 21 because then we're going to be old enough to drink. And so Everyone is excited about the party in August when we turn 21, and we're going to have a mega party, and I don't know what. When we were 18, we had a band, we had all food trucks, we had all kinds of stuff. Anyways, super fun. We have tug of war, we have all kinds of silliness.
And we're all invited, right?
Yeah, sure. No, we have a lot of fun too. This has been sort of a serious talk, but we have a lot of fun. You know, I'm actually quite funny. I just too busy giving you information today because I only have a chance to talk once. So I don't know. You guys have been so patient. Any other questions, or are we
Other
done?
questions?
Yeah,
One more?
Go ahead. I do. I said, we read. We run our whole company. What's the name of the book, Kelly? Extreme Ownership. Thank you. Is something that I read, and I have all my management team read, and we run the company based on it. It's an excellent book. That's probably the first one I would throw out there, and there are others. Depends how many you want. And I'm happy if you email me. I'm happy to give you 2 or 3 more. So yeah, again, that's how you learn, right? It's how I learn. I like to read books on airplanes, and it gets me thinking.
Great. Do you have a couple minutes for after the session if a couple of students want to come up and ask some individual questions?
Sure.
Otherwise, thank you so
All right.
much,
Thanks,
David.
everyone.
Thank you
Good
so
luck.
much for coming.
Good luck.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, nice meeting you. You did a great
Good.
job.
Oh, thank you.
You've done this
So did
before.
you. Well, a couple times.